What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. I have so much fun on ScaleUp Radio with my guests, and I absolutely loved my conversation today with Zoe Henderson, who is the founder of Function, which is spelled Fungtn, and Zoe explains the origins of the name. Zoe is just such a lively personality, also really passionate about what she does. And this is such an unusual idea, or it seemed it to me anyway, because Zoe is on her journey of creating a brand around an alcohol-free craft beer that's brewed with functional mushrooms. So that may sound a bit strange, and we talk about all different aspects of it and those benefits of something called adaptogenic compounds that are found in these functional mushrooms and how they work in line with the body's natural rhythms. But we had so much fun talking about this and then talking about the different parts of her journey so far. Zoe started her business literally during lockdown, self-funded with a small startup loan and some credit cards, and successfully launched the product initially through direct-to-consumer sales, then expanding into retail and on trade, raising angel investment, crowdfunding, scaling the business now to 200 independent stockists in the UK and distribution in the US and Canada. So some great success already. We discussed all sorts of things like pricing point, market positioning, also things around the early stages of launching Function, including the importance for her of focusing on DTC, partly driven by the changes around lockdown, but some key milestones around getting Planet Organic on board, the importance of LinkedIn to her, all sorts of things that we discuss here. It's just action-packed of benefits, much like her drink, I think. So you're going to really enjoy this episode. So let's just go straight across and listen to the conversation with Zoe. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. And today I am here with Zoe Henderson, who is the founder of Function. So there's not much of a clue in the name, although there is, I think, when you come to explain it. So Zoe, tell us about Function and what it's all about.
Yeah, so Function, the name is a play on functional and fungi. So we are an alcohol-free craft beer brewed with functional mushrooms. So not many, I certainly didn't when I got onto my journey understand what a functional mushroom was, but in the kingdom of fungi, we have hundreds of thousands of types of mushrooms, and these category of functional mushrooms are mushrooms that have been found to have additional benefits that go past just good nutrition, which mushrooms do. So they have adaptogenic, nootropic compounds that have been beneficial to health and used for a really long time in natural medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. And so I decided to create a beer using functional mushrooms. We brew a traditional craft beer and we add these mushrooms in to the brew, and we're releasing kind of the beneficial compounds from them. So we are a functional beer. So we're alcohol free, but we are a beer with benefits as well.
Sounds absolutely amazing. So you used a couple of words there that I know I'm not that familiar with. I'm not sure everybody was. So adaptogenic, what does that actually mean?
So adaptogens are herbs, plants, fungi that have additional compounds that go past just your regular nutrition. The phrase was actually coined by a Russian scientist in the 70s who was looking at natural ways to stimulate and enhance troops' performance on duty. And so they came up with different things like rhodiola, ginseng, reishi, different types of mushrooms, different types of natural stimulants that would work adaptogenically, which means in line with the body's natural rhythms. So you're not adding something that boosts your performance. You are helping to enhance systems that your body already uses. For an example is lion's mane mushroom. So your brain produces something called nerve growth factor. And this is a natural protein that your brain produces to help nourish and condition your neurons and the fatty myelin sheath that sits around them to protect them. As you get older, stress, toxins, this starts to degrade. That can lead to things like Alzheimer's. So this sheath and this protective factor is really important. Lion's mane mushroom actually produces precursor proteins that help your body produce this factor. So taking lion's mane mushroom can help your cognitive health, can help your focus and your memory. So it's not doing something that's out of your body's natural rhythm. It's working in line with systems and processes that your body already produces. So adaptogens work and they adapt to your body's natural rhythms and they help you perform at your best.
Excellent. So
also, answer.
Well, that's great. Well, that sounds like a fantastic thing. So all of these neurodegenerative type diseases where the myelin sheath is being eroded, so MS and all sorts of things like that, and Parkinson's and all sorts of things.
So in Asia, they're very advanced in medical sciences as well, but they actually really still use a lot of traditional Chinese medicine and herbal medicines alongside the modern treatments for treating things like Alzheimer's, dementias, cancer. In Japan and Korea, certain centers use high concentrations of things like lion's mane mushroom and other herbs and botanicals to actually help and an additional modality to a treatment program for dementia. So there's lots of studies that are going on at the moment now and that have been for the last 10 or 15 years on lion's mane mushroom as a treatment for dementia, and actually looking at how increased amounts of the compounds, arenosines and herenostones within lion's mane, can actually increase neurogenesis, and they can actually increase protection and regrowth of the sheath when it gets degraded by what's called amyloid plaques, which is the main cause of dementia and Alzheimer's, because it kind of suffocates the sheath, and therefore the conductivity of your neurons decreases, and therefore your synapse, it doesn't fire properly, and then you lose your memories and so forth. So really, really interesting work that's done on lion's mane.
So what got you into this? Have you got a background in a clinical background, or what?
No, self-taught really. So my background is in advertising and marketing, and I and as an entrepreneur, I've had various ventures within hospitality. But I've always been quite healthy. I had a juice bar. That was one of my first businesses. I was into like juice fasting and early things like acai, when nobody knew what acai was, and early kind of superfoods. And I actually started to have some health problems of my own. I had quite bad eczema and skin conditions, which looking back was a lot to do with stress as well. But I spoke to a really knowledgeable naturopath, and she recommended taking reishi mushroom, which is a natural anti-inflammatory and antihistamine. And so I started taking quite high doses of that for my eczema. I also eradicated other things. And this is the thing with herbal and natural medicines. Very rarely do you use them in isolation. You use them as a component of a holistic approach to curing the ailment or the issue. So, I changed my diet, I stopped drinking, I stopped partying, I became a lot healthier, and I started taking large doses of these mushrooms as a supplement, as a powder form in my coffees and teas. And it really helped my eczema. And even now, still every summer, I take reishi mushroom for my hay fever. And I found it's much more powerful and effective than taking over-the-counter antihistamines. And it really helps my allergies. So that's what got me into it. And then I was spending some time in the US, and there was quite a cool brand called Four Sigmatic that was just launching. And they're a mushroom coffee brand. They've been going for about 10 years now in the States. And they had a pop-up in LA called the Shroom Room. And it was basically this pop-up and this crazy guy sitting in there. It was a giant mushroom, and it was like a mobile thing in Abbot Kinney, which is quite a cool boulevard in LA. And I just sat in there for hours.
Sounds like something out of the 70s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I just sat in there for hours talking to this guy about functional mushrooms. And, I just kind of learned about reishi, and then he kind of blew my mind with all the other mushrooms. And then from then I just went on a deep dive and started researching myself, started looking at different mycologists, people like Paul Stamets, and really kind of deep diving into these amazing mushrooms and fungi and the world or kingdom of fungi. And it is its own kingdom. It sits aside from animals and plants. And once you start going into there and understanding how fungi underpins everything in our world and in our evolution, it blows your mind, and you're sucked in for life then. So that was how I all got started. And because I was working within hospitality and the beverage industry, I was actually working as a mindful drinking consultant. So I'd had my own venues. I'd worked a lot in events and festivals in the very kind of boozy world. But then I started to see, people wanting to kind of tail out of that. I myself was, going into my 30s, and, you want to party a bit less then, and really kind of, seeing what was happening and seeing that it was really the social ceremony that people loved, and the connection and the music and the food and the getting dressed up at the end of your working week wasn't necessarily the substances that we were imbibing. But before, there was very little choice. It was like, you're a grown up, you're not an alcoholic, you're not pregnant or driving, you drink booze. And if you're the other things or a child, you drink soft drinks. And there was nothing in between. And then suddenly we started to see this evolution of the adult occasion drink, where it was like, okay, this is a grown up liquid that you're drinking that's not containing alcohol, but still pairs lovely with food. It's not a carbonated, sugary soft drink. It's not a health drink, a protein drink, or, something kind of kooky as it was 5-10 years ago, kombucha. It's actually a grown up, really mature flavor profile drink. And I started to see this happening, and I thought, okay, this is a really interesting market. And actually, just beyond no alcohol, what else can we be putting into these liquids that goes past just no hangover? And for me, the functional element was really interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to come to the business aspect of it in a minute, because I want to explore your journey. But I can see you're drinking it as we talk, which is fantastic.
I have a Lion's Mane IPA, so
so it looks lovely, and it's making me thirsty. I'm going to ask the obvious question. Does it taste of mushrooms?
So, first two questions: does it taste like mushroom? Will it get you high? No, neither. Sadly. So, if you love mushrooms or like getting high, it's probably not the drink for you. But no, functional mushrooms have a very different flavor profile to your traditional risotto, pizza, mushrooms on toast mushrooms. So a few of them are edible, like lion's mane, but most of them are indigestible as an edible mushroom. You have to boil them into a tea or tincture to release the beneficial compounds. Like most things that, like most medicines or things that are good for us, they don't taste great. So actually they have very earthy, nutty, bitter flavor profiles, which is why I think early CPG, FMCG products have been coffees, chocolates, things like that have that kind of those bitter profiles. And hops, to me, is very similar profiles. They are earthy, nutty, bittersweet. And so they work synergistically and actually quite well with the hops. And I paired different mushrooms with different hops. So we have an IPA, we have a Citra, and we have a dark lager, a malted lager. So we kind of paired them to work in that way. So they don't taste mushroomy. And actually, it's a traditional craft beer. We've won lots of awards in the craft beer world, and we brew exactly the same way as a normal beer. We cap our fermentation, so we don't de-alcoholize. You can make an alcohol-free beer in two ways. You can over-ferment to maybe 4 or 5% and then remove the alcohol via reverse osmosis and heat. It's quite an expensive and lengthy process. And actually, I personally feel that you take a lot of the oils and the depth of flavor out of the hops, or you can arrest or cap fermentation where you use a really short ferment. You control a particular type of yeast with heat, and you are still kind of getting that nice juices and oils out of the hops and out of the wort that you're creating with the grains, but you're only kind of doing a quick ferment, so you never get to pass, well, we never get past 0.5%.
Right.
So, you know, it's essentially a good craft beer. And one question I do get with a lot of people that say, oh, you know, mushrooms, fungi in a beer, it's really weird. And I say, well, what do you think yeast is? Yeast is the OG fungi. You know, it's a really ancient organism, and without it, you'd be drinking hop water. And then they go, oh, okay, so actually all beers are fungi beer already.
Yeah.
So we're just enhancing.
Good. Well, you certainly made me want to try it, and certainly I'm going to ask you at the end as to you know, how people can get hold of you and how they can maybe try some and buy some. So that's fantastic. So can you give us an idea of the sort of stage of that where you are with the business? I think you started about 3 years ago. Did you?
I started end of 2020.
Yeah.
It was a lockdown project in the sense that I'd had this idea and a concept for a while, but I was doing a lot of consultancy. I was working more than full time and, you know, kind of developing a product. I just thought, when am I ever going to get that time? And then lockdown obviously happened, this short lockdown that was going to happen for a couple of months. But I thought, you know, nobody wanted or needed a hospitality consultant at that point. So then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to start putting some meat to the bones of this idea. So I incorporated my company, got my URL, started that in May, connected with a consultant who was a brewing consultant who could help me develop the beer side of it, the flavor profile side. And then we went back and forward virtually over Zooms, posting samples in the post. And I didn't actually meet the person that I was working with for 3 months until the lockdowns kind of eased at the end of the summer, and then we had a quick face-to-face, and then everything shut down again, and then we actually launched November 2020.
And where are you now? What's the size or the stage that you're at?
So we at a kind of interesting point. So I started the business completely self-funded with a small startup loan. The government-backed startup loans are great, really low interest, really helpful to kind of get British-backed businesses off the ground. Yep. So I got a small one of those, and then had some empty credit cards, which I was very proud of getting my credit cards down over the years, which I've now filled back up again. But I knew I just wanted to prove the concept. And I thought, you know what? It's a really unique product. There's nobody doing it on the market. Mushrooms and adaptogens and functional herbs and botanicals are a hot topic. Alcohol-free is a hot topic. And if I can get this product out, get the liquid on lips, get it kind of out into the world, I'm either going to lose, 25, 30K and it'd be a bit of a flop, or I'll actually hit something quite good, and then I can look for further funding and go from there. Yep. So it was a success. People loved the liquid. And then I kind of launched completely D2C, completely just direct to consumers through my website, because there was no on trade. There was no way for me to go out and, if you're launching a beverage brand, traditionally you build your brand on the on trade. You go to the bars, you go to the trade events, you get people to be your ambassadors, and that kind of drums up, the consumer demand for it. Then you would probably maybe go to retail, and traditionally at the very end, if you had a bit of cash left, you might do a website and do direct to consumer. And it was just never this way around. But COVID and the lockdowns flipped it on its head. So I launched only on my website. Then I went to retail. And now we kind of do a little bit of on trade, but still very much our focus is direct to consumer and retail. So we did that. And then I raised a bit of cash. And towards the end of 21 into 22, I was working with some angel investors, got a bit of angel investment in 21. And then we went to Cedars and did a crowdfunding round last year. And we've managed to scale the business. So we have about 200 independent stockists in the UK. We launched into Selfridges, John Lewis and Planet Organic. And we have, end of last year, started this year, launched into the US and Canada. And we have distribution there. And we've just launched into Erewhon, which is a US supermarket group. They're quite small, they're only about 11 stores, but they're very much like a Planet Organic, Whole Foods premium retailer that's kind of well known for being the kind of the nest bed where a lot of kind of premium brands start before you go into Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Central Market. So we've laid the foundations, and that's where we are.
Very good. So lots of follow-up questions coming. But in terms of so are there other mushroom beers or no?
So we are worldwide. We're the only commercial alcohol-free, particularly alcohol-free craft beer brewed with mushrooms. There are no other commercial, really past maybe small one-off, range extensions for really obscure craft brewers that they may have done a mushroom beer here and there, but no one's launched it commercially. And certainly no one's done an alcohol-free version commercially. So the price points are really interesting. Alcohol-free has been a really interesting market because for a long time, the value attributed to a liquid in the adult space was the alcohol. Actually, it's the cheapest product. Sometimes it's the byproduct. And it's the part of the drink that does you the most harm, and yet people attribute it with the most value. And for a long time, back in the days of Caliber and Schlur, really, sorry guys, but pretty poor beverages that were very sweet, weren't great. Nobody wanted to pay lots of money for those. Nobody, you thought, oh, I'm not drinking tonight. Actually, I'm going to save money. I'll drink pints of Coke all night, or drink water or coffee if it's during the day. And actually, it was kind of thought of, you save money if you don't drink alcohol. But there was a shift when really good products started coming out. The NPD was stronger, the science behind it, the technology of brewing and distillation, and really developing complex grown-up liquids that didn't have alcohol in them. So very slowly we've managed to kind of push that consumer value proposition to understanding that my beer's made in a brewery. We have the same brew technicians. We have the same ingredients. We have the same bottles, the same labels, the same shippers, the same boxes. Actually, my product costs exactly the same to make, actually more because of the mushrooms than a traditional beer. And the same with, a lot of these non-alcoholic spirits, they use the same ingredients. And as we know, the most expensive part really of a brand isn't the ingredients, it's the branding and the marketing. And all of that is the same whether you have alcohol or not alcohol. So the consumer mindset is changing to attributing more value or the same value to alcohol-free and to alcoholic beverages. So we're a premium product. You're never going to buy us the same as a Heineken Zero or even another really great quality non-alcoholic product like Big Drop or Lucky Sade, because we have this additional ingredients with the mushrooms, which are organic. They're an expensive product. So we sit in between these two worlds of alcohol-free and the health and wellness space, where people are paying, £4 a can for a kombucha or a CBD drink. And so we join these two and we sit in between these two worlds. So we're a premium product and we sit around the £2.80 to £3 mark for a 330ml can. Excellent.
And is it people through the website, you mentioned that a lot of it is direct to consumer. Is that a typically, would I go on there and have a one-off purchase, or would I be signing up to a subscription? How do you work there?
We've got about a 16% retention rate, and we've got quite a lot of active subscriptions. We do offer subscription. It's free shipping and it's cheaper products, so it's great to get people kind of hooked in and ordering continually. And from a consumer point of view, this subscription model is great. It really has kind of boomed over the last year or so, 2 years with COVID, really, where people went, do you know what, I maybe got a bit of extra cash at this point and I can't get to the shops, and I certainly maybe can't get to the specialist shops that have the certain drink or snack or whatever it is that I like. So people really got into this subscription model and this kind of use of ordering a lot online. I think we were always going to move that way, but it's definitely expedited it the last couple of years. So people are really happy to sign up to subscriptions. I mean, I have multiple things on subscriptions now that I never had before, that I started during lockdowns. And then I thought, actually, this is quite handy that I get this product that I love all the time consistently delivered to my door. So that we found has been really good. And we find that people come back, and we're still a unique product, and we still definitely haven't reached the market that the market potential that we could do. So there's lots of scope to get more people trying our product. But for us, that's the thing. Once they get the liquid on the lips, once they try it, they go, oh, actually, this is a really great beer, and it doesn't taste like mushrooms. And there we kind of hook them in that way.
Great. And you you're referring to we. So what does the team look like now? What's
So I've always referred to it as we, because I feel like the business and the brand and the mushrooms were all like a big team. It's still just myself, and I work with. I've got an amazing advisory CFO who was one of my early investors, and she's kind of come on board and is Kim. She's fantastic, and then I work with various other consultants to help do certain things, events over the summer. But we're mid our next raise now, our Series A fundraise, and this is when I'm going to start bringing on some solid team members, because it's quite a lowly we right now.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
it sounds better when you say we.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's amazing that that you've had the level of success that you have already, essentially driven by you. That's absolutely amazing. So let's go back then through some of the key milestones, and let's see if we can pick out some of the lessons along the way. So I guess right back at the beginning, what are some of the things that you got right and maybe got wrong from setting up right at the very start?
Yeah, so I think focusing really on D2C was strong, and I think being able to have that flexibility of pivoting and going, this isn't how you would normally launch a beverage brand. Yeah. And everyone said, well, how are you going to launch a beverage brand now? Like there's, no Matthew Clark's or, no wholesalers are going to take you on. There's no way that you can get out to pubs and bars. And even if you do, everyone's kind of like belts and braces and really kind of, huckling down and only having a few ranges, and they're doing delivery, and it was all a bit confusing. And a lot of people said, well, you just can't, I just don't think you can do it right now. And I said, no, I'm going to give it a go. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So I think having that, picking apart how you would normally do something and launching it was the first good thing that I'm really happy that I just went, you know what? Why not? The world's flipped on its head. If I can't launch a mushroom beer now, then I will never be able to launch one. So that was good. Getting into Planet Organic early on, they were like our first retailer, which we went into kind of spring 2021. So only about 4 months after we launched. That was really great. That was like our first milestone that we, that was a really positive thing to do.
And how did you manage to make that happen?
So I hustled them. I did a bread and jam. Bread and Jam is a really amazing network that anyone who's in F&B and is scaling an interesting, disruptive challenger brand, I would fully recommend going to Bread and Jam events. They do lots online, but they also do one annually in person. And I pitched to Planet Organic through that. I actually heard I'd set up a pitch for Selfridges through the event, and that was a separate thing. And then I heard one of the head guys from Planet Organic talk, and I was in the Zoom, and I just started messaging him, and then I got him on LinkedIn and said, this is what I'm doing, and can I please send you some samples? And he said yes, and then he loved it, and he said, right, you can pitch to one of our buyers. So it was very much kind of just not being embarrassed or kind of, you don't want to be pushy and you don't want to be annoying, but equally there's no harm in sending someone a message. There's no harm in saying, I'd just love to send you samples, and most people like some free stuff. If they like the look of the brand, they're like, great, send me some samples. So I managed to contact him, and that's how I got the pitch. Great.
And were you able to pull on your experience and your contacts then from the work that you've been doing before? Did you know people already?
So LinkedIn was an amazing tool. And when lockdown first happened and I was still doing my consultancy, I thought, right, I'm just going to be on LinkedIn all the time. And I'm going to be posting articles and commenting and following loads of people and introducing myself to people and just be kind of that annoying person. I have a really good friend called Emily Fitchett who started Fitch Brew, which was a cold brew coffee brand. And she was like the queen of LinkedIn, and she was always there, and I'd always see her commenting, and she was just like, I'm annoying, but I literally, post 2 or 3 times a day. But it was great because everyone knew who she was, and, she was in lots of, different streams, and you'd always keep seeing her and her brand popping up. And I thought, right, I'm going to be more like Emily and just kind of be really intense on LinkedIn. And that was really invaluable. I got 3 or 4 of my angel investors from LinkedIn.
Right.
I got numerous speaking events from LinkedIn. So yeah, that was a really great tool. When you couldn't go to these networking events, you couldn't go to opportunities, events, networking things where you'd meet people. So yeah, LinkedIn was really invaluable for that.
All right. And what about some of the other things about, presumably at some point, once you'd done a little bit of sampling and got something you quite liked, you had to move to a level of production, and you had to do all the sort of things like branding, but pricing as well. How did you've mentioned where you've ended up sitting in the pricing, but all the decisions.
It because of my background, I kind of understood what it took to create a beverage brand and what needed to be done in terms of the branding and that was my bit that I really loved. My background is advertising and branding and marketing. So that was a bit that I was really focused on. And I had a great designer who helped me visualize what I wanted, but the brand identity was I created myself. And that was something that I really wanted to focus on. And I knew from the beginning, okay, I'm launching a product literally online, through socials, through LinkedIn. So for me, you can have a great tasting liquid, but if you don't, it's the brand that carries it through. So that the brand and the branding and the messaging and how we our tone of voice was always really, really important to me. So that was done in-house, which was good. And then the pricing, again, I kind of understood that there was this new category emerging within the no and low space, which is this functional drink space, championed really by CBD, but you saw other kind of herbs and adaptogens and things that were normally in your drinks that you might have post-workout or in the health food world coming into this adult occasion drinking space. So I knew that the pricing had to be premium. You work back and you obviously work out the cost of what it costs you to make the product. And when you start out, that's always really high because you don't have the economies of scale. It's not about I don't make ridiculous profits or an amazing margin on my product, but it's like you have to price it in a way that one pushes you into the market that you want to be in, but doesn't overprice you. So customers just won't consume you, but also that recognizes the quality ingredients that you have. Like I said, we brew a traditional craft beer, but the additional process of captive fermentation, we're gluten-free. So there's a process that we remove the gluten from the grains that we use as well. And then the mushrooms as well. So it's quite a costly process.
And also, I guess, you started off, as you said, purely direct to consumer through the website, and that channel, the pricing is quite, well, not the pricing, but the costs is quite different then from if you talked about going through retail or on trade. You've got, with the different channels, you've got different costs involved. So were you thinking of that from the start?
Yeah, and I always was aware that you had to I wanted to build a framework that could be scalable. So I've had coffee shops and a juice bar in the past, and always with my businesses, I've tried to lay the foundations of something as if it was bigger. So, I might have one small cafe, but the way you do your staff training, your health and safety manuals, your branding, to think of it like you have a foundation or a Bible then that you can then give to someone else and they can then recreate the business multiple times. So early on, it was very much like I wanted to create a business that could be scalable, and I wanted to create something that could, we were always going to be omni-channel. Even though we launched D2C at the beginning, retail was always going to be a focus. D2C, on-trade always, even though on-trade is being quite delicate due to the economic situation, but still, we had to have the pricing structure and the capability through delivering, through packaging, through different aspects to be able to service all these different markets as and when they opened up. And the same with export as well. We've laid the foundations and kind of set the stage now for the brand to scale. We're still not doing huge revenues. We're still not, really strong in one category or one market or one channel, but we've got those foundations that now, with increased capital, partnership, potentially acquisition, we can now really scale up the brand.
Excellent. So, and what about finding someone to actually brew the beer for you, and that side? How did you go about that?
Yeah, contract brewing is really common in the beverage industry, and especially the non-alcoholic beverage market. There are lots of beers on the market that are essentially brands that they take their recipe that they developed and they contract brew. So it was a case of, doing a bit of research. The person that helped me develop the product, the brew technologist, he had some contacts. So I just worked and found the best company that could produce a beer. And we've worked with various different people, in terms of brewing capability, tank sizes, the amount of time that they have. The brewing industry, has been under a lot of pressure over the last couple of years, especially now with the electricity and energy increases. It takes a lot of energy for a brewery. A lot of brewers have gone to minimum order quantities. We're still quite small. So, finding brew partners that can do small and often, which is what we do, has been really great. So we've been with the same brewer now for about a year and a half, and they're amazing.
Great. So what would you advise in that early stage when you've got an idea for a new brew, maybe a new liquid? What would you advise to people there? Maybe something you've learned with a bit of hindsight that you might do differently.
So I would analyze every aspect of the product, not just the liquid. So getting the liquid right and making sure that you're happy with it is number one. I would not overly focus group or market test the product. Like if you and your selection of trusted advisors, people on your team, people who are producing the product like it and think it fits with your brand and are happy, release it, because everyone has different opinions. And if you'd gone out and said, I'm launching a beer with mushrooms, the perception of that already, people's biases that they're bringing in, it probably wouldn't got off the ground, and then you're just overwhelmed with loads of different opinions. So I think, for one, do a little bit of testing, but if you're happy with the product, release it. Analyze all different types of your packaging. So when we first launched, we were in bottle. They're called Stein bottles. They're a shorter, stubby bottle, a bit bulbous. Duval used the bottle. It's quite common in Europe. I found the bottle online somewhere. I was like, this is cool. No one else is using it. So when it's on shelf, it's going to have really cool standout. But then realized that not that many brewers in the UK actually have the little tiny expensive fixing that goes on the end of the nozzle that puts the beer into the bottles. And actually, to change the line and fix that on was a real pain in the ass for a lot of people. So, we found one or two brewers that could do it, but they couldn't always. And sometimes they didn't have the fixing. And so that was a real pain. So in the end, due to that and environmental reasons for, recycling and ease of transport, we've gone all to can. But my vision of this beautiful bottle was actually the practicality of producing it and then shipping it. Our breakage ratio, was really high. International shipping glass is heavier. So in the end of it, we thought actually the can is better than a bottle, even though aesthetically I love the look of the bottle. No, interesting. Okay, good. So big, good. I like that, and a really nice specific point as well about the cap on the bottle. Something that you wouldn't normally, with the best one in the world, you probably wouldn't think of unless you actually knew. Unless you worked the bottling line and knew that it had to have this little widget that went. You just went.
Good, excellent. Okay, so you've already talked. One of the big milestones is when you got into Planet Organic. One of those first milestones. So what happens from there? What's the next big milestone?
So I think for us it was winning some awards. So in our first year we won a bronze in the World Beer Awards. We won a silver in the European Beer Challenge. And it was really kind of getting the craft beer market behind what we were doing as well. And for people to really understand that it wasn't just, this kind of quite quirky beer brewed with mushrooms. It was a really great craft beer. So we did some quite cool events. We did Brew London, which is a huge beer festival. There were two other alcohol-free beers there. One of them left halfway through the event. And it was intense 3 days of, 10 till 1 a.m. every day. But it was great. We got some really great publicity from it. We got some really great customers from it. And so we had a good solid year, 2021, of doing loads of festivals, loads of events. And that was kind of like a really good bit of validation because, getting awards you have to enter awards, and obviously you pay for the awards and stuff, but still getting that recognition and getting industry experts to taste your product and to give their validation that it's a good product is really helpful. Yeah,
that whole credibility piece. We often talk about that, the credibility chasm. Still very, a lot of us can get the very early adopters, the innovators and the early adopters to use it, but then actually trying to get into that early majority on the adoption curve, there's a chasm there, and unless you can really establish that credibility, you're not going to bridge that chasm. Excellent, good. And then it sounds like you were getting a reasonable volume going, but you then felt you needed to raise some investment. You said towards the end of 21.
Yeah, scaling and raising a beverage brand is expensive, and they are loads of amazing products in this world. It's a bit like music. There are loads of amazing artists in the world, but it's the people who have the money and the backing behind them that kind of make waves and get into the mainstream, because it's the marketing and the sales team where the real dollars is spent and to kind of get your brand out there. Seedlip, really great alcohol-free brand. They were one of the first kind of mainstream alcohol-free brands. They had a Diageo bought a stake in them, which was incredible. So their advertising was everywhere. The branding was beautiful, but they became the kind of figurehead for the alcohol-free movement because they had a really great bit of backing behind them, and they had the money to be on the billboards, to sponsor all the events, to have some really great, beautiful advertising campaigns, to do really strong digital campaigns. You need to have that money behind you. And even doing events in FMCG, all the trade events, the summer events, you're looking at between 4, 5, 6 grand per event. Maybe you have 10, 15 events in the calendar of the year. That's not including staffing, stock. So you really do kind of melt away cash in those first couple of years of having a beverage brand. And it's expected, people aren't expecting you to make a profit in the first, honestly, between, the first 0 to 4, 5 years. They're expecting to see a lot of expenditure, but the key in that is you're building the brand, and you're getting as you're increasing your revenues, you may be not making amazing profit, but your revenues are increasing and your volumes are increasing, then your cost of your production is decreasing, and then you're getting economies of scale, and then suddenly you've actually got a really profitable product and you've got the reach. So it's really about these first couple of years just scaling that brand, and I knew that I needed to get some juicy kind of capital behind us. And it's not just the cash, it's the advisors and the investors that come along with it and what they can add to it. So it's called kind of like the smart money, the smart investors that are putting money in but actually can help you with your financial planning, or maybe can help you with your distribution, or help you whatever it is within your industry. So we had some great investors come on board, angel investors who, a lot of them actually in the finance world, so they were really helpful with our financial planning and modeling. Okay. And I really wanted to raise a little bit more than I did on Seeders initially, but we went for a lower amount, so to make sure we could get that amount and then overfund a little bit. But really we needed kind of double the amount we raised last year, because now I find myself in this position where I'm trying to raise again, and it would have been better to have a long runway. But your seed raise is really hard, because you're literally going off you as a founder, what people believe in, and projections. Yeah. So you're like, yes, this is how much the company's worth and this is how much we're going to make. But I'm literally going like that and looking at the market. There is science behind it, of course, like looking at the market potential for your product in your category, looking at what other similar brands have done, looking at your product margins and extrapolating that with export and contracts for different supermarkets and retailers. But, a lot of it is on the faith of you and the brand and what you can do. So it's very hard to raise a lot of money in your seed raise. So we raised a little bit, we've proven the concept, we've solidified those foundations a little bit. And now I'm kind of going into my Series A, where I need to raise a good chunk, like $500,000 at least, to then be able to project us where we want to be and focus on our kind of core market, which is North America.
Great. So looking for sort of about $500,000 now. What sort of amounts were you raising then in the seed round?
So I raised just over $200K from Seeders, the crowdfunding platform, and then from independent angels as well.
Yeah, and you said some of those came through your LinkedIn relationships.
Yeah, my first investors were through LinkedIn. Just started chatting to people, had conversations, and went from there, which was great. So that was invaluable.
Great, and I would imagine it's one thing launching a drink into an existing category, and you got the market share that you can calculate or project. You're almost creating your own category here, aren't you?
We are, yeah. No and low is in its infancy, no and low alcohol, but also, the functional drinks market. So what I've had to do is just look at what these markets are doing. So alcohol-free beer market is a huge growth sector. The functional drinks category is a huge growth sector. And actually medicinal mushrooms in themselves is a huge growth industry. So looking at these and kind of bringing them together and seeing where we sit in the middle. Functional drinks is a new and emerging category, but it's one that people are looking to more and more as we're caring more about immunity, we're caring more about our health, and the appetite for partying, socializing without alcohol, but still in a grown-up, flavorful way is just growing. And not just, the UK really kind of spearheaded it, but it's just caught like wildfire in North America. We're now seeing Australia, but also countries traditionally that maybe haven't drunk that much or at all, that are now just looking to cool trends that the West are having. So, the younger demographic of people in the Middle East, in Asia, are seeing, these interesting brands that are associated with fashion and music and non-alcoholic brands that are kind of leading the way. And actually, they're wanting to drink a non-alcoholic beer. They might never have been big beer drinkers, but are now saying, okay, well, young people in Europe and the US are drinking XYZ, and they want to kind of mirror that, which is great. So there's new markets opening up that never really existed. The Middle East is very exciting for the non-alcoholic sector.
Very good. Very good. So what's the story or the vision that the investors have bought into? What was the hook that you managed to get?
It's really like we're creating a product that's helping consumers empower their health, and it's helping us make more mindful decisions. And that's really something that's not going to go away. It's not a fad like maybe pink gin or something that's kind of, a summer trend or something that's kind of in line with fashion or a particular celebrity. It's like, we are as a world really a lot more clued up on, certainly the more affluent Western world. We have huge health problems. We have issues with pandemics. We have issues with overdependence on toxic substances, and people really are starting to understand that the food and drink that we consume, let food be thy medicine was said over 2,000 years ago, and it still rings true, is the fact that what we consume can actively empower our health and change the way, for good or for bad, that we exist and our bodies function. So the health and wellness angle is never going to go away, and it's just increasing. And I think that was a really exciting space where we could create a product that people still want to socialize, they still want to go out, they still want their treats, they still want to kind of have their normal routine of that after work drink or that drink with friends or that lunchtime drink, but they don't want the alcohol, which has been so cleverly woven into society in our Western culture over the years that, drinking alcohol is fun and it's sexy and it's cool and it's grown up, and you can't have a birthday without alcohol or a date night or a social occasion or a party. Yeah. But actually, like I said earlier, it's the social ceremony that we love. We are creatures of ceremony. We love socializing. We love getting dressed up, hanging out with our friends, our loved ones, our potential loved ones. That's what we thrive off as humans. And alcohol has been ingrained in that, especially more recently in marketing, as kind of the social glue. But actually it's not. And I think we're starting to learn that we can still be all these funny, pretty, sexy people doing these great social things and not get pissed. And I think the focus on mental health has really affected that, where people are understanding that, there are more mental health problems and people do have more depression and anxiety and issues, and alcohol really extrapolates that and really doesn't serve us. So yeah, I think it's right. A trend that is here to stay.
Great. So if somebody's thinking about raising some finance, what sort of percentage of the business are they going to have to think about giving away? I mean,
again, this is really up to the founder, their business model. Again, it's better to have a slice of something than a slice of nothing. So again, being too arrogant or pig-headed, thinking I don't want to give anything away, can be very counterproductive. And you have to look at where the money is coming from, what other value can the investors add, and also how many times do you want to raise? Are you thinking, right, I've looked at my projections, I've looked at the product and what it needs to do and where it needs to go and how I need to manufacture it, and actually I just need one big raise so I can give away X amount of money, and then it'll start paying for itself actually, and I probably won't have to raise again, and it can self-fund. Or maybe, more typically in beverage, you need to do 2 or 3 big raises kind of heading up towards your $1 million+ raise to really scale the brand. And along the way, you pick up valuable people that can help you in the industry as well. So it's a kind of pseudoscience where you're looking at, how many times you want to raise, what else you want to come along with investment. We've had some of our early investors, they put capital in, but also they put sweat equity in. So my CFO did that. She put some capital in, but also she has been an amazing advisor to me. So it's like, sometimes people don't have a lot of capital, but they can really give you knowledge and experience and contacts that you couldn't do on your own. So it very much depends on the business and the founder.
And what were some of the metrics or the key things that your investors based the valuation on, or you were able to convince them on?
Yeah, so looking at the other active markets, so the alcohol-free beer market, looking at how that was growing in Europe and worldwide, looking at the rise in functional products, CBD analysis was a good thing to look at as well, how that market was growing and how consumers then were suddenly going, okay, it's not just the hippie woo-woo space, it's actually everyday average consumers who are going, oh, okay, I understand cannabis now. I understand the cannabinoid system and I'm learning about this, and it doesn't get you high and it's not illegal, and actually it can be really beneficial. And as more of these products came to market, more modern, average consumers that were just picking something off a store in a grocery were actually looking at, I want to have maybe CBD in a drink to relax me, or I understand the properties of turmeric now to be anti-inflammatory because there's been lots of press and information around it, so I'm going to choose something with turmeric. Or even gut health and probiotics. So the huge expansion of kefir, kombuchas, and also prebiotic and probiotic yogurt. So people were understanding that there were active ingredients within their foods and their drinks that could give them a health benefit. So that really helped. And then it was just looking at the strength of the brand, looking at the competition, that we don't have any direct competitors. There is not another mushroom beer, but obviously people could choose a kombucha, they could choose a soft drink, they could choose a normal alcohol-free beer, or they could use an alcohol drink. So beverage is tricky because there are lots of different beverages that people could.
Yeah. I mean, technically, if the need is to satisfy our thirst, then anything right through to water.
Good old H2O out the tap, Yeah. It's when people say, who are your competitors? It's quite tough because how micro or macro do you want to go? It's a beverage can be lots of different things. So,
Good. So you mentioned a couple already, but what lessons have you learned in the raising the finance aspect?
Always give yourself way more time than you think. So, when you're thinking, okay, I'm starting the business now and I'm going to probably want to raise next year, start fundraising from the beginning. Right. That doesn't mean you have to actively there with the deck and all your financials, but start thinking about the type of investors that you'd want to speak to. So is it particular individuals that within your industry? Is it investment funds, VCs? It's never too early to contact a VC because you might just really chime with a certain executive there. You might get on, and even though you might be way early for it, they might go, oh, you're quite cool. I like your product. Let's just stay in touch. You're on LinkedIn. They're following what you're doing. So it's never too early to start kind of making contacts with people because you'll be amazed how quickly that runway disappears. Yeah. So always start fundraising 6 months before you think you want to start fundraising.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're doing, say, crowdfunding, my experience of our main chunk of fundraising, you think, oh, it's great. I'll go onto these crowd platforms and you see other brands going on and this crowd comes in and people just give you money and it's great. But actually so much of that is your community. So make sure you're nourishing the community around your brand. And that could be community it's a bit of a washy word now. It gets banded around and by lots of different people, but actually think about who are your direct people that love what you're doing. So it could be the people that just buy your product. So it could be people that come to your market stall. It could be people that buy from your website. It could be people that come to the bar that your beer is stocked in or your product is stocked in. So start kind of reaching out to those people, whether it's through regular newsletters, making sure you're on point with your socials, making sure you're targeting to people, and start to build up those conversations and make it feel really genuine, because eventually you'll need to ask your community for something like, we're fundraising, or, you know, we want to extend our range, or we want you to help us recommend us to bars and pubs and retailers that you go into regularly. So you should always be engaging with the people that love your brand. Now, at the beginning, that might just be one or two people. That might then go, 10, 20 to 30 people that like what you're doing. Look after them, send that newsletter, give them vouchers or, money off or deals if they shop from you regularly. Have those conversations with them. I send out regular newsletters, and it's not always a deal or an offer. Sometimes it's an article about mushrooms. Sometimes it's a podcast I've done, or which I'll be sending this one out to people.
Excellent.
It's other interesting things that you think people that like your product have a certain profile. So share stuff with them, and that helps build your community, because then when you do something, especially like crowdfunding, suddenly you've got a captive audience. And a lot of my investment, we had about 180 investors in total. Basically, some are like 20, 30, £100, but you get 100 people giving you £100. It's like, and I was really surprised at how many customers, put in 50 quid, put in 100 quid. And that's a lot of money for people to essentially give away. They're getting equity, but you're not really getting much equity for 100 quid. So really they're giving you £100. And that was amazing. And I was really touched about how many regular customers actually financially contributed to this raise. So it was amazing.
Lovely. Good. So what surprised you most about your journey so far, would you say?
I think the time at which it's taken to do stuff. So when you're an entrepreneur, you obviously have kind of shied away from working the 9 to 5, from being in a bureaucratic environment that things take ages to do. And I come up with an idea, I want to get it out there and I want to do it. And I go, right, this is happening now. And the reality of manufacturing timeframes, especially when we start our export, filing forms, getting approval, especially when you're dealing with different government bodies, different health bodies, shipping, everything takes way more time than you think. And don't be hard on yourself, because, I was thinking, God, it took me, I started my company in May, I incorporated the company, I got my certificate, I got my URL, and then I didn't launch until November. And loads of people were saying, God, that's a really short period of time to launch a beverage. But for me, I was like, I just wanted to get out there. I was determined I was going to get out for Dry January. I really wanted to do, I think there was an event in October that I was Sober October that I was desperate to do, and I missed it, and I was so frustrated. Right. But actually, just and I've personally underestimated the amount of time it took to do stuff. So be kind on yourself, because things do take time. And once you stop putting an idea and a concept out into the world, you're then beholden to other people and other people's time frame. And, surprise, surprise, you are not the most important person on their to-do list, even though you're like, why aren't you answering my email and completing my form or doing whatever you need to be doing? But actually, just remember that everyone else has got a lot of other stuff going on. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. So what's the legacy that you're hoping to leave? What's the...
I'm not really too up on things like legacy. I personally, my main aim in this was being to help people understand more about functional mushrooms. So I've always come from the fungi background, and I feel like, yes, I was wanting to help people make a more mindful choice. I love the no and low angle. I love the fact that you can have a really great tasting beer and, eventually have us on draft and have a pint in the pub and be part of that social situation, not have all the negative effects of alcohol. But for me, the main focus was the mushrooms. We have so many underutilized herbs, plants, fungi in this world. Nature has pretty much provided us with everything we need to keep ourselves well. But we've very much in the West been convinced that, we eat and consume all the stuff that's made for us, and then we get sick, and then we rely on pharmaceutical companies to heal us. But actually, For a start, a lot of pharmaceutical drugs come from plants. A lot of antibiotics come from fungi. Statins come from fungi. We have a lot of products already that kind of take something from nature and then patent it and turn it into something. But actually, we can go to the root source. So if we look after our bodies and our health first by the foods and drinks that we consume or don't consume, we can actually prevent ourselves getting ill. We can empower our health, and we can rely less on pharmaceuticals to support our health and well-being. I think modern medicine is amazing, and for treating trauma and illness, it's great. But for chronic disease, which is the main cause of death and illness in our Western civilization, we can cure a lot of those things and even not have them start to begin with, so we don't need to cure them purely by what we eat and drink. And I think fungi and its potential, not just medicinal mushrooms and how they help our health, but also fungi's application for habitat regeneration, soil regeneration, everything from breaking down oil spills to recreating live bacteria in soil and our soil health, to helping us understand how plants and ecosystems are connected. The potential and the understanding of how mushrooms have symbiotically helped us evolve and will help us evolve in the future if we listen to them is amazing. So for me, the focus is, have I helped people learn more about fungi and medicinal mushrooms? And I think we're on a bit of a trip with that at the moment. Fantastic Fungi was a major trending documentary on Netflix. If no one's seen it, I would recommend going on Netflix and watching Fantastic Fungi. Radio 4 has a mushroom program on now. Radio 4, there's somebody talking about psychedelic mushrooms and fungi for health and wellness. I never thought that would happen a few years ago. So it's very much, fungi has been waiting patiently for millions of years, and now people are starting to realize they're not just slimy mushrooms that grow in the dark or that can poison us. They're actually a really amazing ally in us surviving on this rock for a little bit longer.
Right. And what's the ideal end game for you? What are you hoping for?
So with Function, it would be, I'm not precious about running a beverage brand for the next 20 years. I think that there are people who are smarter than me and that have better networks, larger brands, maybe, Molston or a Heineken or InBev, if you're listening. There are larger businesses that do this perfectly. So for me, it's having Function acquired by a company that can really have the distribution channel, the team, the marketing team to take it further. And then I think my work will be very much looking at other applications for mushrooms and fungi and kind of going in more on the research angle for that as well. I definitely think my path is going to be fungi.
Great. Good. Brilliant. No, it sounds like a real passion for you as well. And it sounds great. You up for a couple of quick fire questions to bring us to a close?
Definitely. Let's do it.
So what are your key goals for this next year?
So this year we need to raise more money, or we need to partner or be acquired by another business to really be able to scale our product and launch into the US, which is my key focus.
Right. Brilliant. Good. If you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Everybody doesn't really know what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
So don't worry about it. Imposter syndrome is a huge thing. I think it's it seems to affect women more than it does for men, but definitely no one really knows what they're doing. And what people are posting on LinkedIn and Instagram is the very best of what they're doing. It's like a beautiful swan sitting on a lake, but underwater pedaling like crazy.
Yeah.
So don't worry what anyone else is doing. You just focus on you.
Perfect. Good. What you've already recommended a couple of documentaries, but what books, podcasts, documentaries? Anything you'd recommend?
So Fantastic Fungi on Netflix for sure. There's an amazing book on growing and cultivating mushrooms and more about the in-depths of mushrooms by a guy called Paul Stamets, and it's called Mycology Running. And then there's an amazing author, mycologist, musician called Merlin Sheldrake, and he has a great book called Entangled Life, and that's kind of like a good starter. Mycelium Running is a bit more technical, but Entangled Life is a really fantastic book. It only came out last year or the year before, about the interconnectedness of mushrooms and fungi on our planet, and it's a brilliant read. So I'd
there must be a podcast on fungi somewhere as well, I would imagine.
There's lots. There's one called The Mushroom Hour. There's lots of different mushroom revival. Yeah, if you go onto Spotify and put mushrooms. There's quite a few podcasts. It's great.
Excellent. Good. Are you an app person? What have you got on your phone? What apps are you finding really useful?
What is the most simple app? Do you know what? I'm quite not of my generation. In fact, that I would love if the internet stopped tomorrow, and I would love it if I just went back to a phone that could just text and call.
Yes, but not LinkedIn. You need LinkedIn.
Apart from LinkedIn, I would love it if none of that actually existed, and I was just back, selling mushrooms and my beer on a stall somewhere. But I now live out in the countryside, so I don't use Uber anymore. I don't use Deliveroo. I live in a nice rural area, but I think probably the most useful app that I've had on my phone. I don't know. Google Maps.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Who's had the most influence on you?
I think from a fungi point of view, is probably Paul Stamets. Amazing mycologist. And then in terms of kind of the business world, I think there's been some really amazing women that I've had kind of crossed my path that have worked in the beverage space. Emma Heel from Lucky Saints, Ellie from Calenio. There's some really awesome people. Amanda Thompson from Thompson & Scott. We're quite lucky in the no and low space. There's a lot of female founders out there, and I'm part of a really great female networking group called Wonderwork, and they do a female networking cohort. There's been some really great kind of peer-to-peer and people who are a little bit ahead of you networking groups that I found, and that's something, because the no and low industry is growing, but it's quite small, though you kind of knew everyone to begin with, so it's been a really great community. So there've been some really inspiring women that have helped me along the way. Excellent.
Great. What's been your most successful marketing tactic or lead generation tactic? I guess, if you're selling online, D2C, maybe think about there.
I would say, Instagram has been invaluable. As much as I dislike social media, I'm now on TikTok, which I've battled that for a long time. My partner is telling me how beneficial it can be, so I'm starting on TikTok as well. But Instagram was great because we established ourselves as a third culture brand, so that's a brand that kind of sits in between different geographies. And we launched online, so people were very much like, "Oh, where can I get your beer? I'm based in Canada, I'm based in the US." So before we even were exporting, because I kind of didn't really geotag much on Instagram, so it kind of got to a really broad audience. So that's been amazing. It's been a really amazing tool for reaching out to people all over the world.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can almost hear Stephen Bartlett in my ear going, it's Instagram would be perfect for this. Good. All right. It's been absolutely fantastic, really fascinating talking with you today, Zoe. And I could keep on asking you questions forever.
We'll do a part two.
maybe we need to do a part two.
I've raised lots of money.
Yeah, maybe we do that. So if people would like to get hold of you, find out more about Function, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, as I said, function.brewing, Function spelled Fungtn, fungi, Function. We are also function.com, and you can always hit us up on email, hello@function.com.
Brilliant. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be heading over, and I've got to. You've made me so curious. I've got to try it. So I'll
send you a case.
Well, I wasn't hankering for that, but I'll go and buy some. Very kind of it. So Zoe, thank you very much indeed for being my guest today on ScaleUp Radio.
Great, thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.